Today, I'm welcoming back one of our favorite voices in forecasting, Demographer Ken Gronbach. Ken has spent decades studying population trends and their ripple effects on the economy, housing, and society at large. I'm Kathy Fettke, and welcome to The Real Wealth Show.
You're listening to The Real Wealth Show with Kathy Fettke, the real estate investor's resource.
In this episode, we dive into many things like Latino immigration, AI, how we're turning into an aging society with boomers leading the way, and what all this means for the economy and the housing market. Ken has been a vocal supporter of Latino immigration for his entire career, not from a political standpoint, but from a demographic one. He'll explain why immigration is important for our economy, vital, and for the housing market. Warning though, we do get into some very controversial topics during this episode, but trust me, I am looking at this from a place of data to understand what's going on with real estate in today's world. By the way, if you want to learn how to invest, you can now download a guide we made called The Busy Person's Guide to Getting Your First Rental Property in 90 Days. I've met so many people out there who've listened to this show for years, but have not pulled the trigger. So if you want to find out more, just go to realwealth.com/90 days. Ken, you are my favorite guest. Welcome to the Real Wealth Show.
Get out of here.
I'm my favorite. Yes.
Okay, cool.
And the youngest. So Ken, you are the demographic king. You study it so closely, you just know what's going on. So what is the biggest story that people are missing today when it comes to demographics?
Depopulation. The population itself for the world has dropped 50% in the last 50 years.
Well, that's because we were taught to stop having babies.
Yeah. Well,
there was the concern that we were going to be overpopulated.
Exactly. And you know what? We're going to be underpopulated.
Wow.
And it's not a good thing because it won't be the distribution of the ages of the population of the earth is not going to be good. It's going to be old. We in the United States are going to become a nation of Floridas. And that's just the way it is.
Where no one can drive well, huh?
Well, I talk about that. One of the first things that happens down here, baby boomers control over $100 trillion in assets, 100 trillion with a T. And the first thing they do when they get down here is they buy the car of their dreams. So they buy a Corvette. You can't believe all the Corvettes down here with 700 horsepower. And the drivers are 80 years old with no reflexes. So it's a problem, but it's cool.
But on my other podcast, Real Estate News for Investors, we talk about longevity and how with all the breakthroughs with AI, 80-year-olds are going to be like 40-year-olds.
Well, you'd think, but physically there will be issues.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the average age. We're going to move retirement from 65 to 75 to be sure. That will happen in the next 10 years. And the number of 70-plus-year-old people that are working will be very high. And the reason for that is we literally are not having enough kids. Right now, we have a series of population breakdowns in the United States, and Generation Z is 1 year old to 24 years old. To 20 years old. And Generation Y is 21 to 40. With Generation X, born 65 to 84, they're right in the middle of our population right now. And baby boomers are 61 to 80. And then after that, it doesn't matter. So it's an interesting
Wait, are you saying I'm Gen X? All right.
Were you born 65 to 84?
Well, 64, but I'm not 61.
Okay, there you go. Well, good. Yeah, you're Generation X, and you're a problem. Generation X.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Generation
Always have
X.
been.
Well, you know what you did is you could not provide the labor necessary for baby boomers because your population, the number of people born in that period, Generation Xers, was 69 million, and it was about 11 or 12% smaller than the baby boomers.
Wow.
When you have that kind of a difference, you have an issue, and you're causing problems right now because you're supposed to be the moderates in our political continuum, and you're not doing it because you're not there. And not only that, your population...
Meaning there's just not enough Gen Xers to make an influence in the political
Well,
world?
politically, what do you have? You always have politically, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of you, but you always have liberals, which are generally young, and then you have moderates, which are middle age, and then you have very conservatives, who are older. Boomers are now conservatives, which was odd because we were hippies at one time.
Not the boomers I know. I'm in California. They're still as liberal as ever.
Oh, that's yeah. Well,
And
that's
it's
good.
interesting because the Gen Z and the younger millennials, I've noticed kind of a trend of conservative, and it could be from podcasts. So I believe you that it always was that way, and it seems like it's been changing a little.
It does, and California is an anomaly anyway.
Yes.
I just spoke in California. I spoke in Carmel. Guess to who? U.S. Strawberry Commission. California provides 90% of the strawberries for the United States. 90%.
We used to. I hope we still are able to. I hope we have enough workers.
That's what I talked to them about. And yes,
Good.
There's a degree of automation that's taking over, and AI will be an issue, but you're fine. So let's talk about what you want to talk about.
Okay. There are certain groups, I should say, there are certain ethnicities who are having more babies than others. I just read an article about Europe that, and I believe it was 40 years would be more of a Muslim state. And what do you see? Do you believe that to be true? And if so, at what point? And then in America, what are we seeing here, say in 40 years?
It's changes.
Mm-hmm.
Europe right now, the Muslim influence in Europe is significant, and it's significant across the board. The thing with Muslims is they're even though they're having more children than the indigenous folks, like in France and Italy and Spain, there's not enough of them to overwhelm the population. So we have an issue in, for instance, if you want a free house, you can go to Italy. You can get a free house. Why? Because they don't have enough bodies there to fill their housing infrastructure.
Wow.
So, and it's the same way in Japan, and it's the same way, and it will be the same way in South Korea. They're just not having enough people. There aren't enough people. In the United States, we are blessed with Latinos. And I say blessed because your generation could not supply the labor necessary for my generation when we moved up and gained wealth. So you sucked in Latinos, and now we have 70 million. And that is huge.
70 million Latinos in America? Is that?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And that's all generations. So, and the beauty of Latinos is they're Catholic. When they get married, they stay married, and they have kids. Now, their fertility is not overwhelming. They're not having 6 kids, but they are having above replacement level fertility, which is above 2.2. And that's critical. So the Latinos in our country right now are going to essentially save the Americas. They're going to save Canada. They're going to save the United States, Mexico, Central and South America. And how are they going to do that? By being born, by being there. We're watching an interesting phenomena take over. I live in Florida. Florida has a disproportionate number of Latinos in their 24, 25 million people that live here. What are the Latinos doing? They've been having kids. They send their kids to school. Now their kids are in college. So we're going to have a whole new element of politically active, socially active, economically active Latinos, and they're going to be a force. And it's the best thing that's ever happened to us in light of the fact that the Caucasians are not having kids. So brown people and to some degree, African Americans will replace us. So what's happening big time in the United States, and it's already happening in EU, is you're going to see a minority-majority population. And so the minority in the United States is already taken over 25 and under. 25 and under white people are a minority, period. They're outnumbered by African Americans. They're outnumbered in a combination of African Americans, Asians, and Latinos. And that's
in California, whites have been the minority for a while, I believe.
Yeah, that would be the case. It's going to be an interesting time. And the way we look at it, we tend to look at minorities as not being socioeconomically on par with indigenous folks. And that's nonsense.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Once they get educated and once they get politically active and once they gain in their critical mass, they're who we are. That's who we are.
Well, it's always the hungry who win the game, and those who were maybe born with a silver spoon aren't working as hard or aren't trying as hard as.
I would subscribe to that.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of talk about our current administration and raids on, and we talked about strawberry fields. I don't know how much is true and how much isn't. It's very hard to get straight news. But that's been a big concern is workers. The Latino population, they're big workers in California. We need them. Good families, strong households and household growth. How are the current immigration policies going to affect all that? I could say personally, my housekeeper was born in the US and she is an American, has a passport, and she's afraid.
Yeah.
She's afraid to even leave her house. And I'm like, honey, you're as American as I am. Don't be afraid. But what about her friends or siblings? So how again, is this current policy going to affect immigration?
It's terrible. It's anachronistic, which means that it belongs somewhere in the past, but it doesn't belong in our current times. Period.
I don't understand how people who have for 10, 20 years been hardworking people in America never somehow able to get a work permit to do that. We all benefit from, as we talked about, the strawberries we get in the market and so many things, everything, the houses that we live in. If this continues, again, how do you see it? Do you believe the impact will be big enough to affect the labor market?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Let's talk numbers. We have currently 70 million people, Latino, Hispanics in the United States. And this does not include the 20 million Asians or the 45, 46 million African Americans. But once you start tampering with these folks and calling them second-rate citizens, boy, are you asking for trouble.
Even those who are legitimately citizens,
Yeah.
Or,
Absolutely.
Or should be. I mean, this is what is just so confusing is it's almost like, I don't know if I'm saying this the right way, but squatters' rights. You've been on a property for long enough, you have rights to that property. Well, I just would think that if you've worked here long enough that you would have rights to get at least at a minimum a work permit. We are getting into a political realm, but it will and is affecting construction, real estate, businesses, restaurants. I've been in Chinese restaurants where it's Mexican workers. How much of, I don't know if you have the answer to this question, but I know the Hispanic population was one of the largest growing groups of home buyers. Do you know if that is still the case?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if you are buying or selling real estate, understanding this demographic is really important.
It's imperative.
And where would you say that growth is happening in general, not just in Hispanic communities, but in general, where are we seeing growth in the U.S.?
Well, right now, under 40 years old, we have 170 million people. We've never had that before. That in terms of real estate, that's wonderful because they need to live somewhere, right? 170 million people. What do we know about Generation Y millennials? They're late to everything. And in fact, Generation Y millennials have taken adulthood, young adulthood from 25 to 35. They've moved it. They've moved it 10 years. It is what it is, and that's what they did. They're marrying late, they're having fewer kids, and they're buying their homes late. But they're going to buy homes because they have to live somewhere. And they're finding their way socioeconomically into jobs where they can afford to buy homes. One of the biggest problems that this group has that's currently 21 to 40 is student loans. They're in debt and they have credit card debt. And because I don't know, maybe somebody never told them how to handle their debt, but they are going to be huge. Now, what do we know about this particular?
Well, to their credit, they live at a time where you one click and you just bought something. Sometimes you don't even know you did.
You're gonna see a different world, really a different world. Under 40 years old, 170 million people. Now, keep in mind, we have about 340 million people in the United States. So where's real estate going to go? We need to figure out how to satisfy their demand. And it's going to be interesting. There are, depending on where you are, like I recently spoke in Texas, and Texas is on fire I spoke to a real estate group there, and they're doing very, very well. Florida right now we're going through some kind of a lull in our demand, but it's impossible for it to remain. Impossible, because the biggest part of the baby boomers haven't moved here yet, and they have to live somewhere. So we're going to see a big change in real estate in Florida and the South in general, probably from Virginia down.
Well, we've been always, well, at least for the last 20 years, very bullish on the Southeast as a place to invest in housing for that reason. Texas and Florida have been the two states with the highest immigration, or I should say, not just demographic shifts, people moving to those areas and
Yeah.
having the highest population growth. But real estate has slowed down. Real estate sales have slowed down in those areas, and there has been increased inventory in both Texas and Florida, probably due to more construction happening there in anticipation of growth. But you think that those are going to, be absorbed at some point?
Peak of the baby boomers. Who's down here? I'm a baby boomer. I'm right in the middle of it. The peak of the baby boomers were born 57, 58, 59, 60, 61. If you looked at the population of the baby boomers, you would see a big bell-shaped curve. The top of the bell-shaped curve has not moved to Florida yet because they're too young. Are they going to come? Yes. Is it a huge number? Like you can't believe. It is a huge number that roughly, all those years, there were 4 million plus people born in the United States. So we're talking about a large number. Real estate, and where it's warm, is going to do well.
The Carolinas as well?
Yeah,
Alabama,
I would say from Virginia down.
Mm-hmm.
Carolinas, Georgia, absolutely, positively.
And what about the concerns about increased insurance? You don't think that'll stop them? Increased insurance costs, I should say.
We adjust.
Okay. What's the current situation? Do you hear people in Florida complaining about it? And can they even get insurance? Like we have that problem even getting it in California.
Yeah, it's an issue. Will we figure out how to do it? Do you think the insurance industry is going to go away? We're fine. We'll figure it out. We will figure it out. I lost in Ian down here. I lost 3 cars. Cars, yeah. I lost my 1965 factory high performance Mustang.
Because it flooded, or what happened to it?
Flood.
Yeah.
Okay. We saw a 9-foot tidal surge, and it came right in, and my wife and I stayed, and we're on the 4th floor of our condo building, and we watched it come in, and we said, "There go the cars." She lost a collector Mini Cooper GP. They only make a few thousand of them, and so insurance. We got a huge check. And we were so happy with our insurance company. Is it harder now? Yeah. Will we adjust and figure it out? Yes.
I mean, intuitively, we're still investing in Texas. We're still investing in Florida. I sometimes question myself over that, but it's just been a trend and continues to be a trend, partly because of the no state income tax. To your point, once you do turn 65 and you're ready to retire, you might be interested in going to a no state income tax state, because that's going to make a big difference when you're on a fixed income on retirement. Huge difference, right? Yeah. Are there any other states considering that, knowing that this wave of boomers is ready to retire?
Yes. And that's anybody listen, you have to go with the flow. Boomers have had it with being cold. I don't care how they grew up or how they feel about where they lived. They want warmth. And so I think you're going to find that the warmer areas, Texas over up the East Coast to Virginia, are going to be accommodating, and they will.
And that has absolutely been our focus. Now, do you see the majority of this group? Now, how many did you say in that? I think you said years 1958 to
57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 5 times 4 million. Now, there are 4 million in every one of those years, and there are 5 years, so that's 20 million.
Okay, so there's 4 million baby boomers in each of those years, adding up to about 20 million that will be turning 65. Is that?
They're aging.
They're aging to a point where they would
Where
want to
they're
get out of the cold.
exactly.
And it just, yeah, it just makes sense. That's been our business plan at Real Wealth. So technically, now is a good time to acquire properties in those areas while there is excess inventory because you could negotiate, get deals. I mean, intuitively, that's what we've been doing. And again, sometimes I doubt myself, but it's great to hear this. Now, you also have that bump in the millennial, or as you say, the Gen Y group. That bump is from, I'm just going to guess on the years because my daughter is in it. My daughter is 32. What is the age group of the bump in millennials that's ready to also settle down and find housing?
What I will tell you this is the millennials benefited dramatically from the Latinos that your generation brought in. So millennials are almost a minority majority right now. We will be minority majority in about totally up to about 40, 50 years old in another 10 or 15 years.
Interesting. Okay. So again, coming back to my generation, Gen X, which I'm so pleased to say I'm a part of because I know I'm on the cusp. But what do you think caused that slowdown in birth? Was it birth control came out?
No, it was the silent generation born 1925 to 1944. It was small.
Okay, so their parents were also a small generation.
Yeah,
Then
what happens is if when you have a small generation of parents, a small generation of babies normally follows, and that's what
Mhm.
happened.
And so with the baby boomers, a huge population, their children, the millennials, are another huge population.
Correct.
Okay, and then the Gen Z, their parents are the Gen X. So that will also be a small group. And that's the issue that you're talking about. That's the issue of lack of babies, maybe simply because the parents aren't old enough. Although the millennial, see, this is where I get confused. Is you have this millennial group that's huge. You would think that the babies coming on board would there'd be a lot of them, and I see them everywhere. In my neighborhood, there's being a baby born almost every week. There's so many babies. Our concerts that used to be old people in Malibu, it's now families and young people. It's all changed. So I keep saying there's a baby boom, but people like
Well,
you who study it say there's not.
there's not because we have another factor that has taken over for Generation Y and Generation Z. There are about 150 million people born each year in the world. There are about 60 million people that are that die. There are about 60 million abortions each year in the world, and about half of the babies that are born are unintentional, which means they weren't planned. Why? Because the process is fun, right? Yeah,
You're not thinking about it at the moment.
yeah. Well, but I want you to think about another factor, and I hope this doesn't mess things up because I've written a treatise on this, and it freaks people out. So what's replaced mating? What do you think? The internet. And so what are
And
people?
next AI.
Well, it's I'm frightened by the potentially what the effects of AI can be to this process. But literally, men and women have fallen back from mating and found a substitution on the internet. Period.
Well,
And I'm
one
not
of the
going to.
slides that I show in my presentations is household formation and more homes, more households being one person households. And so that is an interesting thing because then you have more demand for real estate if there's only one person living in that household.
There are going to be a lot of issues that are going to come up because we have so many factors in play. You have government in play. You have fertility in play. You have mating in general in play. You have marriages and weddings in play. You have small and big populations in play. You have ethnic groups in play. It's a fun time to be alive, and it's a fun time to watch this whole process, but it is changing.
Well, what we know for certain, it's happening before our very eyes, even in our own company. The AI is doubling its power every, I don't know, 6 months or 3 months, whatever it is. It is getting better and better and better, which is then going to take over more and more jobs, which has been a huge fear, right? Of people saying, well, attorneys, how long am I going to be pertinent if you could go to AI and they're going to know every case. What about and doctors? I mean, positions that you would just never think could be taken over by a computer. There's concern that it will. But at the same time, if there's population declines, there's not enough workers, that would sort of offset that, wouldn't it? So the timing's right to have less population.
Makes it complex. I'm personally concerned about AI because AI, I think, is going to take its toll on white collar long before it's going to take its toll on blue collar. Mm-hmm. Because AI still can't really drive a truck yet. And I know people are looking for that. AI truly can't build a building or fix an automobile, repair an automobile. We're going to have issues going forward that are going to benefit certain categories of jobs and be the worst thing that could possibly happen to other categories. And you're going to see...
Which are the jobs at most risk?
White collar.
Yeah. So again, like I said, attorneys, even,
white collar professionals. Sure.
White collar professionals. Our news writer retired and we didn't replace her because AI could do the job. Yeah. It's very interesting. And that's just one smaller example. My daughter doing email marketing. We keep telling her, you might be obsolete soon, have that all automated. You know what? One thing that cannot be replaced by AI, being a landlord. I know we're in the right place. Listen up, real wealth people. An AI is probably not going to be your landlord.
No, I've never thought about that, but why is that?
Well, we as humans hopefully control the money supply, and we, until we're in a position where we're able to acquire homes and rent them out. And I don't think that can be replaced. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. It's funny. I could never be a landlord. And I have a brother who I've always been fiercely competitive with, that if it moved, he bought it and put tenants in it.
I'm the same way. I cannot help myself. People were making fun of me this past weekend because if our house is empty, I rent it. If I'm going to Europe, I rent out my own home.
Yeah.
And pays for my Europe trip. And do I need to do that? No, but I just can't let it sit empty.
No.
So there's some of us that were just born this way, I guess. So coming back to demographics in the U.S. and this concern that if there's a population decline, there's going to be a glut of housing. We're going to be, like you mentioned earlier, Italy, where you could get a house for free because there's nobody there to live in it. Do you see that as a risk here in the U.S.?
Well, combine that risk with a disproportionate population of seniors, because that's what we're headed for. Population distribution is critical to any economy. You have dependent children, you have dependent elderly, and you have people in the middle who care for both. If you don't have a good population in the middle, and that's where we're headed long term, and there won't be any kids to care for, we're going to be closing schools. We're going to be closing schools like crazy, but we're going to have a disproportionate number of elderly people that must be cared for. And that's going to be interesting, because when it gets too far gone, then what we're seeing is it wrecks an economy.
So if you were looking at where you could be offering the most value in the future, it might not be student housing. It might be senior housing.
Bingo.
Yeah. Okay.
That is exactly correct, which is why my wife and I feel we live in Florida. There are people right now snatching up the units that are empty in our condo building. There are 51 units here, but we have a very, very special place on the water with docks and everything. It's going to happen. And you're right. This is the time to buy right now, because we have an administration that nobody understands. And we don't know where they're going to take us. But I personally believe is going to be temporary. And then we're going to be back into what I would consider to be a normal economy for a while. We will be a nation or a world of elderly people, with the possible exception of sub-Saharan Africa, because they have no technology and they are still mating and they're still having 6 kids. But it's going to be an interesting time.
And when you say that, are you talking about 10 years from now, 20 years from now?
Yeah, well, I would say 20 years from now, maybe 25. And in 25 years from now, I won't care.
But looking out for your heirs and your children and your
Yeah,
grandchildren, it's
yeah.
important to have this
You know,
information.
that good point. And they yell at me when I say that. But
Well, and it's so funny. People change. Thought processes change. But when I was young, there was always we always knew that the Hispanic population in California was having babies faster than white people, and that there would be a time when there would be more Hispanics than whites, and at the time, I would say people were more racist about that and concerned and had fears around that. And here we are. And all I can say is the Mexican people I know and the families that I know are the most lovely people, the hardest working. You go to a park. I took my daughter to a park in Ventura, and it was all these Hispanic families playing, and I didn't see too many white families, but they were barbecuing and having family time. So we don't know what the future brings, but I can tell you that the future that a lot of people were afraid of has turned out to be pretty good.
it will be excellent.
There you go.
I tend to be very, very frank. And I tell folks, I said, listen, you got a problem with Latinos? Here's what I suggest you do. Go out and find a Latino, kiss them on the lips and thank them for coming, because without them, we're cooked.
Well, another thing that isn't mentioned is undocumented immigrants paid $96 billion in federal, state, and local taxes in 22. Most of that amount, $59 billion, was paid to the federal government, while the remaining $37 billion was paid to state and local governments. So a lot of people working here for a long time, not really getting credit for what they've done. I do hope that we rethink immigration. I certainly don't believe in undocumented people, but why not document? Give work permits. Yeah.
The real issue, and I don't know why we've lumped so many people into this, is you don't want the criminals. I mean,
Right.
and that's a real
I don't
issue.
care what color they are or where they come from. We don't want criminals. Right?
Or what age, anything.
Yeah.
You don't want the criminals. So if you can come up with a logical, sensible way of dealing with that issue, that solves the problem.
Absolutely.
It literally solves the problem. Just having the other folks here, and my daughter would yell at me because I call them undocumented. She said, "Dad, they're people, and we need them desperately.
Yes.
So why don't you just call them people who have not yet been given the right to be a citizen?" So there we go.
Yeah. That process needs to change. All right. Ken, always a pleasure to have you here on The Real Wealth Show. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And thank you for joining me here on The Real Wealth Show. If you want to learn how to invest in the Southeast, you can download a guide we made called The Busy Person's Guide to Getting Your First Rental Property in 90 Days. Just visit realwealth.com/90 days. And that's 90 as the number, 90 days. I'm Kathy Fettke. Thanks for joining me here on The Real Wealth Show. We'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, go to realwealthshow.com.